I'm Maddie. I am 18 years old and I'm a native from California, but I've been living in Idaho for the past 4 years. And, I'm grateful for being in the women's home and I want to thank God for my salvation. It was really hard to get to where I am today and I went through a lot of struggles and trials, but thank the Lord that I'm here. um, So I'd have to say, like, at the beginning of my life when I was born, it was pretty hard because right when I was born, my parents kind of split, which was kind of upset because growing up, my sister always told me, "You're the problem, you're the why they split up." And I was like, "Oh, okay," because that's how it felt like, because, she had a good childhood and my childhood was it was kind of rocky. But my mom wasn't really in the picture. She was always in and out. She would come home some days and then leave at night, and we would wake up and be crying because she would be gone. And my dad, I don't know where my dad was at the time, but I never really bothered to ask. So I just think he was, doing his own thing. um, Growing up, I grew up in Baldwin Park, in California. I grew up around there, and my grandma raised me, and I really am appreciative of my grandma because without her, I'd probably be in the system, and I'm very grateful for her. All of my stuff growing up was pretty much hand-me-downs or from the old swap meet, my favorite place. That's where my childhood was. And yeah, I just remember the area being very bad at the time. And, I've had a gun pointed at me when I was 3 by a couple of kids. They told me, "Hey, stand right there." And, like they were on the second story, and me and my sister stood there and they pulled out a shotgun. And I was like, "Oh God, okay. I'm 5 and now I have to run." So I ran. And I think that was like my first traumatizing experience that I'll never forget living at those apartments. Yeah, that was harsh. But throughout my life, I've kind of only had my sister with me. My mom was very much on drugs, meth and heroin. Um, what's sad is, my smell for her is like the J-Lo perfume and apple margaritas. And to this day, I cannot stand both of them. It makes me like sick to my stomach. um, but I remember eventually my grandma had to give us up because, she couldn't take care of us anymore. She was getting old. And it was either we went in the system or my aunt was to get us. And luckily, my aunt took us in, and I'm very grateful for her. And that's when she kind of introduced me to Christianity and all that. And at the time when I was a kid, I didn't really care much about it, but I started to become engulfed in it. And I was really appreciative that she showed me things and taught me a little bit about the word and about, God. And it kind of went downhill once she had her own kids, and it just became really abusive. There would be times where I'd be sitting at the table crying because she wanted me to memorize scriptures, and it just became like religious trauma for me. And I kind of distanced myself from the religion area. I didn't want anything to do with it. I just thought of it as, I'm just gonna get hit because I don't know this, or I'm just gonna get in trouble because they don't want me to say anything to anybody. And pretty much it just became, I wanted to be closed off. And it really affected me in school. Like when I was younger, I'd always be happy at school. I'd be talking to kids like, "Oh, you want to play?" But then, towards like elementary, it was like I didn't want to talk to anybody. I started to be really in my depression, and I had really high anxiety because I had to hide bruises on me, or she would hit me with the wooden spoon and I would feel embarrassed. I wasn't allowed to play outside sometimes with the kids because I didn't clean something right, and she would come home from work and knock down all the picture frames off the counter where I would clean and tell me to do it again because I wanted to kind of get away with it and clean around them. But, it just became really hard. Eventually, though, my sister spoke up about it, and they called the cops and all that. And she just denied everything, denied, denied, denied. My sister and I are just looking at each other like, okay, we're gonna really get it once we go back home. And sure enough, we did. A very vivid memory that I have of the day that she kicked us out was we were standing by this like hole in the wall, and it had mirrors all over it, and she had her glass china on it, like glasses hanging and like crystal plates and all that. And she was standing there yelling at us, and I'm just crying because I don't understand what's going on. And my sister's yelling at her back while holding me. And then she just takes her heels off. I remember it's like a nude heel. And she just throws it at the glass china. And I was like, oh God, like what's happening now? And she's just throwing stuff and glasses flying everywhere. And I'm just screaming and she's screaming. And it was just hectic. And I just remember, my sister grabbed garbage bags and we just put everything in the bag and we went. And I remember too that my grandma came and, it turns out she was living at like a senior home, a little couple blocks down there. So, we went to my grandma's and, she helped us out for like a few months, but eventually they found out that we were there. So we all got evicted. And it was kind of hard because, I'm still a kid. I didn't understand. I was like around like 10 at the time, and I was just like, I have no idea what's going on. Like, all my life, I have to say, I was completely in the dark. Nobody would tell me anything. I would always be confused, and I would find out like once it got hot, and I would be like, oh God, like, that's when like my trust issues started, and I was like, I can't trust anybody because nobody's gonna tell me anything. And I started to be like nosy and knowing things that I wasn't supposed to know. And as it was, I was very like closed off from the world. I think I remember my first TV show that I ever watched was WWE wrestling. And it was in a garage with some kids, and they're like, hey, have you ever seen like WWE? And I'm like, no, all I watch is VeggieTales. And, they put me in their garage, and I'm here watching Undertaker, going ham on these people. And I'm like, wow, like I was brought into the world of violence. And, I had that little violent spirit inside of me, but me being a quiet kid, I wouldn't really like show it. So I was kind of exposed to that, and I just took interest into it, and I was like, that's really cool, I like that stuff. And eventually, me and my sister would reenact it and try to be like cool little wrestlers. But yeah, we ended up getting hurt and up crying, and that's when my sister started to be like, I don't like you because you cry for everything. And she started distancing herself from me, and it just got really hard because I'm like, you're my only sister, like don't leave me. Eventually when my sister did start to distance herself, my mom came back in our lives, and so did my dad, and they were both fighting for custody over us. I was still with my grandma, and when we got kicked out, we crashed at another aunt's house. I'm grateful for her, and I know we put her through a lot of things, but I'm glad that she opened those doors. Eventually, though, she did turn sour towards us and kind of said that we were a curse, me and my sister. And, that kind of hurt because, like, as a kid, like, I've always felt rejected. I didn't have my parents. I just had my sister. And now my sister was rejecting me because, she was getting older, but I still had that younger mindset because of all the things that happened. And it was just hard because we just moved around everywhere. I would have to say I've at least gone to, like, 5 different elementary schools growing up, and it was hard, really hard, because you have to make new friends, and eventually you just get tired of making friends, and you're just like, I'm just gonna be alone. That's pretty much what happened. I was the lonely person. Anytime someone would talk to me, I wouldn't take interest because I'm like, I'm just gonna leave anyway. So school was very hard for me. I mean, I was a good student. I had A's. I always did my work, but eventually getting older, like, it just went downhill, and I just didn't care anymore. I've always tried to look at the positive things in life, but it gets really hard when people are telling you negative things, especially my sister during the custody battle saying she wanted to be with my mom, but I wanted to be with my dad because I was more comfortable. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little bit of a daddy's girl, so yeah, I just really wanted to be with my dad at the time, but my sister wanted to be with my mom. But eventually, my dad won the custody battle, and we went with my dad. And also because my mom wasn't there to pick us up for visitation, so my dad's like, I'm just gonna take you home. So that's how I ended up living with my dad. And, those 4 years with my dad were nice. I'm very grateful that I was with him. He spoiled us. We both had our own rooms. I think that was the first time I ever had my own room. But, still my sister would come sneak in my room, my little twin bed, I guess. She was still going through some things too, and we would sleep together in the little twin bed. And, it was hard because I didn't understand what my sister was going through, and I wish I did. But at the same time, I just you hated me, but now you want to sleep with me in my bed? Like, what's going on? But it did make our bond a little bit more closer. But after a while, my mom, she would come pick us up on the weekends, and she would feed her thoughts and tell her things. And I just noticed a big change one day. I was exposed to self-harm during that time when she was in middle school and I was finishing up elementary. And I just saw a bunch of cuts on her arm, and I was like, hey, what is that? And she told me, she's like, oh, I just got pushed up against the fence by some girls and my arm got cut. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense. I don't think, fences are like that. They're usually flat. I've been pushed up against some fences and I've never had cuts like that. And eventually I just got curious, and, I ended up realizing what she had done. And it was very heartbreaking for me because it's I love my sister. She's the strongest person I know. And the fact that she had to go through that really hurt me. And I kind of beat myself down sometimes because, I was naive. I was very sheltered. I wasn't very open to things. I was, ignorance is a bliss, pretty much. I was in my own little world. And it was just really hard. I remember one day my sister came back from my mom's. I didn't want to go anymore because she had a giant breakdown where she would throw bricks at cars coming by, and she would just scream at them, and I was like, oh my gosh. And I called my dad. I was like, Dad, come get me. I'm scared. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, my mom's losing it. I can't be here anymore. And then I just stopped going to my mom's house. And my mom was very mad at me. She's like, oh, you don't love me anymore, kind of guilt tripping me. But it just wasn't that. I just couldn't be there. I was a kid. I had no idea what was going on. And after that, my dad told me, he was like, I'm gonna give it to you straight because, you're old enough now, you're about to go to middle school. Your mom's on drugs. She's on drugs. This is not her as she usually is. That's your mom is using. And I just remember crying because I'm like, oh my God, was it my fault? Was it because I didn't want to go see her? Or I always thought it was me. I was always the problem because that's what was fed into me as a kid. Oh, you're a curse. Oh, you're the reason why our parents split up. And it was just oh, okay. So I kind of had a lot of insecurity within me and a lot of self-doubt. And I was never too sure on things, and I just kind of closed off a lot. And eventually, once I got into middle school, I was with a bad crowd of people. And, they introduced me to weed, and, I started smoking and didn't really tell anyone. And on top of that, my dad would smoke cigarettes too. What he would do is, I remember vividly, he still does it to this day, I love him, but he would smoke half of the cigarette and put it out for later. And then he would come back and smoke it. So what I would do was I would wait a couple days because he would let his ashtray build up, I would wait a couple days until there was some good ones, and I would go take them and smoke them because, of my anxiety. And I was like, yeah, it's fine because, my dad does it, and, I caught my sister doing it. It's normal. Everyone's doing it, But it wasn't normal for a 12-year-old to be smoking cigarettes. So, yeah, that's how I got introduced into all that. And then the friends that I had, they would be smoking weed, they would be smoking joints and all that. And I was like, okay, this is fine, everyone's doing it, it's cool. And it was not cool. Eventually, though, my sister moved out of my dad's and went with my mom. And I was like, well, I'm gonna go, I'm not gonna leave my sister. And I remember I got a lot of hate from my sister doing that. She would call me names like Shamu. She would kind of bash on my insecurities. She would say that I was an annoying little mosca and that why don't I leave her alone, or this and that, A, B, and C. And then eventually my mom thought it was a joke, and my mom started calling me those names too. And I was like, oh man, like they both hate me, but I'm just gonna stick it out because I'm scared that my sister's gonna end up on the street doing who knows what. And you know, my fear became a reality. My sister would go to the street and do who knows what. And eventually when I got older, I think I was around like 13, 14, around there, I told my sister, I'm gonna go with you because I don't know what you're doing and you're coming home late and I'm just gonna go with you. So I went with her everywhere. At the time we were living in San Bernardino, that's where my mom was living. And I remember we would always go to the skate park. I don't remember what it was called, but we would always go to the little skate park there, and there would be a thrift store across the street. And behind the skate park, there was a liquor store. They would never card us or anything. We could buy whatever we wanted. And that just kind of opened a whole negative gateway for me. And I've seen a lot of things, the people we were hanging out with anytime I was there. I don't know if it was like a discernment or like if I don't know, I was like, I'm psychic or something, you know? And anytime I was at that skate park, I'd always feel sick. I'd always get like sick to my stomach, I'd get nauseous. And it wasn't because of like the things I was smoking, like, you know, I'd smoke all the time and all that. But anytime we left the property of the skate park, I would feel just fine. And that's when I knew, like, dang, like, I think God's still watching me and he's telling me, like, you're not supposed to be there, like, you gotta go. But a fuerzas, like, I wanted to be there, I really did, because, you know, my sister was there and I made friends, and, you know, even though they weren't good people, I was like, it's fine, you know, they're cool, like, I'll find the good in them. But I just couldn't hang out around there anymore. So I stopped going with my sister, and it was a rude awakening. Like, once, you know, the day I decided I wasn't gonna go, I was in a car with her friends, and she snorted a line of coke in front of me, and I was like, oh man, like, I don't want to do that. And they were cutting me up a line too, and I was like, no, I'm good, like, all I do is smoke weed, I don't want to do all that, I'm good. But, you know, eventually curiosity got the best of me, and I would sneak out at night and go with the friends that I made at the skate park, and I would do those things. I would smoke, take coke, pop pills, and eventually I just feel like I really lost my mind. I really did. I ended up getting institutionalized a little bit. There was a time where, like, my mom pushed my grandma, and I was like, oh heck no, and I went haywire. I almost went off on her, and I just ended up going to the hospital for like quite a while. And when I came out, they prescribed me a bunch of pills, which was not helping my benefit, because as it is, I was already pill popping. You know, they prescribed me trazodone, Xanax, lithium, and I was just taking them all like candy. And eventually I was like, I can't do this anymore. So, you know, my dad called me eventually, and he was like, hey, how are you? And I was like, I'm good, like, how are you? And he's like, do you want to come visit me here in Long Beach? And I was like, yeah, like, I can use a little vacation, you know, like, I'm down. So, you know, he picked me up, I went to Long Beach with him. And that's when the last 3 days he broke down to me. He was like, listen, I'm gonna be moving to Idaho. If you want to come, and, you know, I'm willing to pay for your ticket and all this stuff. And I was like, oh, please, yes, take me. I'm miserable. I'm depressed. I'm overweight. I don't take care of myself. I am literally sad. Like, I'm upset with myself, and I just want to die. And, you know, at the time I was self-harming and all that. I was pretty much going through it. And yeah, I went to my mom's that day, and I told my mom, I'm gonna leave to Idaho because I don't like you. Didn't say it like that, but like in my head I was like, I don't like you, like I'm leaving, like bye, that's it. But it took a while, you know, to like get all my things together, and my dad was still renovating the house. And since I mentioned it to my mom, like, a little bit, like a while ago, she'd always start in my face, oh, your dad's not coming for you. Like, he just said that to get your hopes up. Like, you're gonna be stuck here with me and all this. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, just stop. Like, I'm still talking to him. Like, you don't have to be feeding me these negative thoughts. Like, I'm already bad enough. Like, you already broke me down enough. Like, just leave me alone. And I would isolate myself from my mom. I would lock myself in my room, And I got to the point where the door on my lock didn't work anymore because I had a little brother. He was my half brother. I kind of regret being sour to him, but I kind of resented him because he had all of my mom's attention and I was just there, and I would have to like wait months to get like my necessities, and it got to the point where I'd just steal them. So I resented my little brother, and it got to the point where I couldn't isolate myself anymore because he would bang on my door, Maddie, 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 and he broke the lock on my door, and I was like, Mom, come get your kid, like, I'm trying to get my life together, but in reality, I was just in my room smoking. Like, I'm trying to get everything together, and here you are, like, just letting him do what he wants. And she's like, well, maybe don't be in your room and being such a fat bum, da 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 da. She said it a whole lot worse, a lot of curse words. And I was like, oh man, like, I hate it here. And I would call my dad and complain to him, and he's like, just hold out, like, we're getting there. And I was like, okay, you know, and I held out. And then I remember the last month I was there, my sister got pregnant, and she had my little nephew. And honestly, I'm grateful for my nephew because if he wasn't born, I think my sister still would have been on those streets. But I feel like her calling was to be a mother, and honestly, she's a great mom now with him. But yeah, she had the baby. I would stay up with the baby. You know, that was also my baby. I call him my baby because, you know, he's my baby. We share him. I really miss him. But yeah, so she had my nephew, and I got really attached. I didn't want to leave, but I kept telling myself, like, I gotta leave. I have to, because I'm not gonna make it here. I'm gonna literally lose my mind. So, you know, told my sister, like, just because you had your kid, like, I still gotta go. You know, and she was like, okay, that's fine. And eventually I left, you know, I said my goodbyes to everybody. I didn't say bye to any of my friends because I didn't really care much about them. They were the people that were dragging me down, and I knew that. So kind of said bye to everyone that I cared about and gave up a lot of my stuff. I remember when I went to my dad's, I went with like 5 t-shirts, like 6 jeans that didn't fit me, and 2 pairs of shoes where my feet were like that, and my toes were all scrunched up because my mom would never buy me stuff. And I remember when I went there and my dad saw what I had, he's like, this is all you have? I'm like, yeah, pretty much. Like, I don't have that many clothes. He never really took me shopping. And my stepmom saw my shoes, and she's like, these are your shoes? She's like, we're gonna go buy you shoes. So they bought me a whole new wardrobe. And I went there and I was like, okay, like, this is weird. Like, I'm not used to getting things. Like, I got so, like, dehumanized living with my mom that I didn't know how to ask for things. I didn't know how to communicate. I would just literally, I remember the first month living there with my dad, I would cry in my closet every night and just, like, rock myself to sleep. And then I'd wake up in the morning and be fine. And, you know, I'm actually very grateful for my dad. He kind of drilled in me, like, you know, communicate, tell me what you need. And to this day, you know, I still have problems asking for things because I'm like, I don't want to be a burden, you know, like, I don't want to. But he's like, no, like, ask. And I'm like, okay. But it did kind of turn me into a brat, but it's okay. So I got used to asking for things, and eventually I was doing good. You know, the first 2 years I had my life together. I was doing school, having some decent grades. From all the things that I went through, I kind of struggled with math. I'm dyslexic a little bit. I need some extra time to read and write. And yeah, my dad really had the patience for me during those times of healing, and he really helped me kind of heal myself during that time. And I remember around, like, going into the 3rd year around there, my stepmom found out she was pregnant with my baby sister, and I didn't know how to feel. I was like, whoa, like, my dad's 30-something and he's still having kids. I was like, what's going on? I was really happy for them because, you know, it was my stepmom's first kid, and she's always wanted kids. And, you know, she's, as it is, she used to work with children with special needs. So, you know, I was like, she's going to be a good mommy. Like, I'm very happy for her, you know. And after we found out she was pregnant going in, my sister calls my dad and is like, hey, like, I need help. And, you know, my dad talked to me, he's like, are you okay, like, with sharing a room for her for the time being? Because we lived in, like, a 3 little story house, and it was a little crowded, but, you know, where I was like, okay, like, I'll be okay sharing a room with her and the baby, you know? And he was like, all right, like, I appreciate it because, you know, she really does need help. And I was like, okay, yeah, that's fine. So he flew my sister out here with her kid, and it was hard. It was really hard. I kind of got beaten down again because when she moved in, I mean, I was told that I wasn't going to be babysitter. You know, I was going to focus on my school. I was going to finish my junior year, finish my senior year, and go to college and all that. And I was like, okay, bet. Like, I don't got to watch kids. That's cool because I've been watching kids all my life. And sure enough, she came, and I was watching the baby. I would come home after school and watch the kid, and I would be like, okay, like, I have to still do my homework. And, you know, I wish I could take a nap because I've been running around everywhere, and I would like to go to sleep. And, you know, my depression was I wanted to sleep a lot. So I'd watch the baby, and there would be times where I'd fall asleep holding him. And my dad would come, he's like, you're not supposed to sleep with the baby, da, 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 da. And I'm like, oh God, like, okay, like, I'll try to stay up, like, I still gotta do homework later too. And there would be times where I just wouldn't do my homework. I would go to school, ask my friend, hey, can I copy your homework? Like, I was watching the baby all night because my sister comes home at like 1 in the morning from work because she used to close up at her job. And they'd be like, yeah, okay, whatever. So it just kind of got into a habit where I wouldn't have sleep. I would be running off of like 2 hours of sleep, going to school, falling asleep in all my classes. And then on top of that, I made some friends. My friends all smoked weed, so I would sometimes ditch my classes, or I would like be there for attendance and then dip out and then go smoke in their cars and then come back. And then it would be lunch, and I would go to lunch, and then in math class, I'd sleep in math class. That teacher never said anything though, because I always somehow got my work done. I don't know how. So I'd somehow get my work done, and then I'd just go to sleep. And I just kind of slept my whole way through junior year. And, you know, they told my dad, like, she sleeps a lot. Does she sleep at home? And they're like, no, she's always with the kids. And I'm like, yeah, that's a problem. Like, maybe I shouldn't be with kids. But, you know, I didn't say that. I was like, yeah, it's okay. Like, I'm working on it. I'm like, okay, like, your grades are really starting to drop down into the D's. Like, you usually got to keep a C average. I was like, okay, like, I'll try. So I really did try, but at the same time, I didn't. It was like half effort. So that was really hard. Going into my senior year, I think was really rough. Like, that was my downfall right there. I started, you know, getting big-headed, and I'm like, hey, like, since I'm smoking and buying all this weed, why don't I sell it? So I started selling it. And weed went to bigger things. It went to me selling pills, because, you know, I'm like, I used to pill pop like maybe some people like pills out here. And sure enough, they did. And I started selling psychedelics like shrooms and acid and all that fun stuff. And yeah, I was making money. I was like, wow, like, I'm balling, you know. And I'm not gonna lie, I was a little bit of a crook because I would have vapes too. My friends and I would smoke them all, and I would crack charge them. I would like strip wires off the Android chargers, red and black on either sides, and then I'd charge the batteries in the vape with like they had no juice in them, and I'd charge them and then put them back together, and I'd sell them to kids, and they'll just be basically smoking cotton. And I would be like, dang, like, I'd feel bad, but at the same time, it's like, that's what they get, like, you know, that's not my problem, you know, whatever. So that's what I would do, and I would sell them to them, and they'd be like, hey, like, what's up with this one? And I'm like, I don't know, I just bought it, like, it was in the box and everything. They had me take it out of the box to test it, like, I don't know what to tell you. And like, okay, like, whatever, I guess. And at the same time, like, I'm wondering, I'm like, I never get ID'd. Okay. Like, that's fine, I'm not gonna think about it because I'm pretty tall, I'm like 5'11", so I don't really get ID'd for anything, which is kind of weird. And at the same time, I'm like, hey, how are you? You know, I talk to the people. So I kind of really bought a lot of things for my friends. And yeah, it was all bad. And eventually, you know, I barely graduated my senior year. I don't know how I graduated not being in any of my classes, being stoned or on one in all of them, and just not being there at all mentally or physically. And yeah, I still graduated, but thank the Lord I somehow graduated. Um, Going on, my parents finally found a house. They saved up and they're like, hey, we're gonna move, this and that. And my sister was still in the home with us, and I was like, oh man, like I don't want to be there. And I had my car and all that, and I'm like, I'm just gonna dip. So I left. I just left, and I just told my dad, it's not you, it's me. Like a big dramatic breakup. I'm like, no, it's not you, it's me. And I just kind of left, and honestly, I regret leaving the house. I just couldn't take it anymore with my family. I was being suffocated, and the responsibility was catching up on me, and I'm like, I can't do this anymore. Like, I just started working. I would work late nights at Amazon, and I don't recommend working at Amazon. But yeah, I would work late nights at Amazon, and I would be really tired, and at the same time I would smoke too. And then I couldn't do it anymore, and I met a friend, and she's like, why don't you just come live with me? And I was like, okay, like, let's do it. So I went to go live with her and her family, and I'd give them money here and there. They kind of told me like, yeah, don't worry about it, like, we got you. You can just like save up on what you need so you can get your apartment with with my daughter. And I was like, okay, yeah, sounds good. So that's what I did. But eventually it caught up to me because they're like, we're gonna move to another house because like I guess they brought more family in. And it was kind of like, I'm not saying like it was like a trap house, but it was like a trap house. Like, it was dirty all the time. I was the only one that would clean it. I kind of patched all the holes in the wall because I don't know like what happened, but there was holes everywhere, so I kind of like patched them all up. And I was kind of handy, so I kind of like built my own closet and all that. And eventually like the stress caught up on me because I was watching more kids, and I was like, oh man, I'm stuck with kids again. So I had a big giant anxiety attack, and I just remember like something in my head. It was like, hey, go to Vegas. And I was like, Vegas? Like, it's in Vegas. And at the time I was I was still dealing things, and I met a guy. He was my distributor. And he told me too, he's like, do you want to go to Vegas? Like, after the thought of Vegas came in my head, he texted me, he's like, do you want to go to Vegas for a week? And I was like, okay, yeah, why not? Like, I thought about it, you're thinking about it too. So I went to Vegas. We took my car because right away, like, there was a lot of red flags. He had a warrant on his car, he was supposed to go to jail. He wanted to bring a friend with him. He brought two of his friends, and I was the only girl. And I should have been like, no, I don't want to go anymore. But me being me and wanting to get away, I was like, I'm just gonna go. So I went, and it was fun the first few weeks, like the first week, like Monday, Tuesday, and all that. It was fun, but like when the weekend came, that's when things started to go downhill. My dad was blowing up my phone. I just turned my phone off. I was like, whatever, like, this is me time, go away. And I took a lot of acid. I was tripping on acid. I think when I was out there, I at least took like 50 tabs. And I was just like, oof, on one. And it was just kind of rough. Going forward, kind of, I drank like a whole bottle of like cheap vodka to myself, like in the little plastic bottles. I drank the whole bottle of vodka to myself, and I was just drunk and tripping, and I was just out of it. And I thought I lost all my credit cards, all my debit cards. I lost my phone. I lost everything. And I was like, dang, you know what, it's okay, because I got this, like, I'll figure it out. And I did somehow figure it out. In a way, but then I got separated from my party, and I got lost, and I was walking on the street of Fremont for 2 days, just tripping balls and not knowing where I was, because this is my first time in Vegas. And eventually, I think like by the grace of God, like the zipline people, I don't know if you've been to Fremont, but they got like zipline that goes up over. The zipline people saw me and they're like, we've been watching you and we don't know if you're okay. Like, do you need help? And I'm like, yes, I need help. And I'm just crying. I'm like, please help me. And, they helped me. I spent a day at a shelter, to sleep and all that. I couldn't really sleep there, but I ended up like falling asleep on the floor with a blanket because I was so anxious and I just felt sick to my stomach because of all the drugs that I took. I was kind of detoxing and I was like, man, like I'm so miserable. Like I just want to be with my friends. I just want my car back. And they had my car, they had all my things. So I was like, man, I'm still wearing a dress. And, I was all bruised up because I got groped a couple times by some people and I had to punch some people. So I was all bruised up. I was all going through it. And eventually, they found me and I was like, oh my God, praise the Lord. So we were back together, but there was somebody missing and it was my distributor. And I'm like, what happened to this dude? So, they all went on their phones and we're just looking on the rosters or anything like the arrest rosters to see if he got arrested. And sure enough, he did. They said that it was for GTA, Grand Theft Auto. And I was like, man, like this fool tried to steal a car. Like, what's wrong with him? And eventually, we found out that it wasn't because he stole a car. It was because he was on a bunch of drugs and he was trying to find my car and he got into the wrong car and fell asleep in the person's car and the person dragged them out and beat him up. So I felt bad and I remember answering the prison call and he's like, where are you guys? You gotta come bail me out. And I'm like, with what money? Like I lost all my stuff. Like, I don't know, like you gotta stay there. He's like, well, at least wait for like the 72-hour holding. And I'm like, I can't because this guy has a PO meeting the next day and we gotta go, like, hold out, like, we'll get you, like just wait. So it was just messy. I ended up being broke, having no money. I got robbed, and sure enough, the person that robbed me was my friend's friend, the guy that he brought, and it turned out he had like 3 gun charges and a bunch of other nonsense that was under his name. And he was a pretty bad person. And the thing that sucks too was I kind of was like, you're my savior, because he was the person that found me at Fremont. I was like, you're my hero, da, 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 da. And I was just like all over him, but at the same time, like, I was on drugs. So yeah, it was rough. So we came back home. I had a bunch of things in my trunk that I was not supposed to have. And he kind of took all of his stuff, and then he took my friend's car, my distributor's car. He took his car and went back to Vegas to go get him. And I was just kind of sitting there like, what did I do? Like, I have no money. I have no phone. I just have my car, which I'm grateful for. Now I have an AK in my trunk, and I don't know where to go from here. So, I went to my friend's house where I was living at the time, and she was mad at me. She was like, I can't believe you left, da, 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 da. And I'm like, I told you I left. Like, I didn't just disappear. I said I was going to Vegas. I didn't think you didn't take me serious. Like, I said I was leaving. She's like, whatever, like, I can't talk to you, like, when you're all tripped out like this, because I had no emotion whatsoever, because, like, I was just, like, zombie, like, dead. And she's like, I'm just gonna talk to you another day. And I was like, whatever, that's fine. And, I kind of, like, disregarded how she felt, because, I was still really on one, and I was still tripping. And pretty much the next day came, my dad came and talked to her mom, and they all, like, kind of talked together. And we agreed, like, okay, I'm gonna go to therapy. I'm gonna get my life back together. But before I could even get the therapist's number, my friend was like, you have to leave. And I was like, whatever, that's fine. So I just grabbed all my things, loaded it in my car, and I was a quarter to E, and I just sat there like, man, like, I'm broke. Now what do I do with my life? So I had to make a really tough decision, and I called my dad. So I called my dad, and I was like, man, this is gonna really suck. So I called him, and I was like, Dad, it's like, I messed up. I have no money. I lost my phone. I lost my debit card and my credit card. and I lost about like 20 grand. I got robbed, and my disputes haven't settled yet, and they said it's gonna take a couple weeks, and I just need a place to sleep because I don't want to sleep in my car again. And he was like, okay, where are you? So he came to get me, and he put like $15 of gas in my car, and he looked at me dead in the eyes and he said, if you run off or go anywhere, I'm gonna report the car as stolen. And in my head, I'm just like, how are you gonna report it as stolen if it's my car and under my name? But I didn't think about it. I didn't even think about like leaving him or anything. I'm just like, I really don't care. I just want somewhere to sleep. Like, I'm sorry that I left. Like, just please let me go home. So I went to his house, and I really just broke down crying. I was like, Dad, I don't know what I was thinking. Like, I'm an idiot. Like, why did I do this? I still have an AK in my trunk. I didn't tell him about that, but he probably knows by now, or I don't remember what I did with it. I think it might be gone or something. I don't know. I think I sold it. But I was like, I have all this stuff. I don't know what to do. And he's like, well, give me all the things that are, illegal. And I was like, okay. So I gave him all my weed, all my paraphernalia. And then the other stuff I just kind of hid. I don't know if he found it, but yeah. But I didn't really have much. It was just a lot of my things. And I just really broke down to him crying. And he's like, well, you already know what's going to happen. And I'm like, oh, no, what's going to happen? He's like, you're going to go to the home because I went to the home, so you're going to the home. And I was like, yay. And I was just crying. So I signed over the rights to my car to my dad, and I just kind of left all my belongings. I brought what was needed to go to the home. And I'm honestly thankful that Sister Violet and Brother Renee answered the call when they did. Because if not, I don't know where I would be today. I'd probably be still out there struggling and crying. And I'm honestly glad that I didn't get lost in Vegas for longer, because I feel like I would be a Vegas bum, just scared. But yeah, I believe that all the experiences that I went through and everything that kind of happened in my life was for a reason. So I can reach people who are kind of like me, young and naive and wanting to better their lives, because I could have gone down a whole lot of different paths in my life. I've had people who've literally pulled out pookie pipes and asked me if I wanted to hit it, and I could have said yes. But I always told myself, no, I'm not going to do that. And I'm just thankful that, God never really left my side, because I always felt like I was being watched in a way. And I'm very thankful that I'm still here today, because in all realness, I could have been sex trafficked or something. I could have been kidnapped, but I'm here today with Victory Outreach, Southeast LA, and I'm grateful for everything.